Fuck it, we're doing it live.
The Bull and Moose Tavern coming at you.
We're starting out that way.
Do we have an intro?
No, we have no intro on a live show. No music, none of that fun stuff.
Jesus Christ, just a hard cut going live.
Hard cut going live. 0 viewers, too.
So good. So it wasn't too jarring for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if we'll even get any viewers on our first live show.
Well, we only have 7 people that listen to us regularly, so...
Yeah, I mean, this might be just us doing a podcast live for no reason at all.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's not like we're part of an entertainment group, that has, at least a dozen other people who have nothing better to do on a Friday night that, could pitch in and watch us live just to support us. But no, those assholes will probably just listen afterwards. And I hope you don't come in live, because I want you to hear this rant later.
Well, I mean,
we've done something.
It's Independence Day, and or it's Independence Day weekend. That's why we're doing a live show. We're actually gonna do something different than we normally do and talk about our belief structure. I'm the socialist. Aaron over there is the libertarian, and we're gonna debate some topics. But as we always start out, let's review our beer, and I will tell the story this time because it's my story. So
yeah, it's your beer.
I went on vacation a couple weeks ago down to Virginia, and as part of my vacation, I did a tour of Wegmans. So I had my grateful and very nice host bring me to the Midlothian Wegmans in Richmond, and I saw this Devil's Backbone Schwarzbier black lager, and he said it's a very good beer, and he's like, you don't have that in upstate New York? And I'm like, no. I'm gonna buy it and tell Aaron this is the beer we're drinking. And that's what I did. And on to your story of trying to find this beer.
Yeah, so my magical gas station didn't have it. Not too shocking. But, they've come through in the past, but they didn't have it. So then went the usual stomping ground. I thought I'd get smart and try the beer places first who didn't have it, and went to a couple other places, and then saw that Wegmans did have the brand Devil's Backbone, but didn't necessarily say that they had this one on the app. They said they had a Vienna lager. So I thought, maybe I'll just try it. So I went to Wegmans, went to go find it, found where their brand is on the shelves, got all excited, and saw that they had the Vienna lager and then an empty space, and it said seasonal. And I thought, oh, I could get lucky. They may have a case in the back. So I got someone and was like, excuse me, what was the seasonal? And he was like, I don't know. I was like, well, was it a dark lager or was it like a light lager? And he goes, oh, it was definitely dark. So I got all excited. I said, do you happen to have any in the back? And he looked at me and he was like, no, we only got a little bit and we sold out 2 days ago. I don't know if it was it, but
it might have been.
It was devastating, which is a sad story, but I have a fun one because I sometimes have a backup beer that we usually don't talk about, but every once in a while I'll get a backup beer. So I have also with me, because it is 4th of July weekend and I felt like this was very festive, 1911 watermelon mint hard cider. This was purchased at my magic land of gas station beer section, and the story behind it just feeds into the fact that the beer selection at this gas station is magical, because I saw it on the shelf and there was only a 4-pack and there was no more of it. So I was like, ooh, this has got to be like a hot item. And so I grabbed the 4-pack and I was like, I can't pass it up. It's too weird. It's too different. I got to try it. So I get a couple other things and, I go to check out. And the lady looks at it and she goes, oh, that's weird. I've never seen that before. And she's like, are you buying that here? Like, weird question to ask, because I put it on the counter to be scanned. I was like, yeah, found it on the shelf over there. She goes, oh, I've never seen that before. And I was like, oh, do it was the only one left, so I assumed it's been popular. She goes, was it the only one left or the only one there? And I was like, weird question. Would that make a difference? How many do you normally get? And she goes, and this is the part that freaked me out. She goes, I don't know. I've never seen anyone stock those shelves. So I don't know what goes on at my gas station. Maybe there's some magical beer fairy that just shows up, when no one, when it's closed, which it's never closed because it's 24/7. So at some magical point in the middle of the night, I assume that magical beer fairies show up and drop off random assortments of beer. So,
well, let's crack it open and try this thing.
Absolutely. Schwartz beer.
It smells good. It's definitely has that lager flavor to it, but then it's got like a bitterness that you don't normally get on a lager.
I have a light bitterness, but mostly I have a light flavor that I was not expecting the flavor to be this light for something this dark.
Like it kind of reminds me of like a Molson, maybe a little bit.
I was afraid that it wouldn't taste good because it sat outside your front porch
for like 30 minutes, not even. And it had been in the fridge before I put it on my front porch.
Perfect. So as easily skunked as possible.
And Aaron, I would like to point out, we actually have one viewer, it looks like. Zero. Oh, sorry, they left.
God, you scared them away, Jake.
I did.
God damn it.
I scared them away.
I don't know where you see these things, these details.
Magical.
Is it just on your host view? Is that where this shit shows up?
Be on my host view.
I got nothing. I see myself. I see you. I see myself again.
Yeah, I see myself twice.
Which no one else can see. So it's great content. Great content.
Oh, we always put out the best rambling content on this series here. It's what we're known for.
It is. Well, I was thinking about it, and it's like doing our show live is not that big of a deal because we don't really edit our podcast anyway. And when I say we, I mean you, because I don't do any fucking work on this. I show up, I ramble and drink beer for an hour to 2 hours, and then you do what minimal work you end up doing.
So here's the biggest edit I've started doing. I've started using the app to remove silence to make our silence between things shorter because I was finding we were having periods where nothing was being talked about. So we got to get better at filling the awkward void that is us. Yeah, we do. But I'm going to make it awkward again really quick before we start this open discussion and ask you, do you like classic video games?
What person that lived through the 90s doesn't love classic video games, Jake?
There's got to be someone out there that doesn't like classic video games.
To the gulag with them.
Well, you know what? You wouldn't meet that person on Ridley's Gaming Realm, though, because this is an awesome Facebook page to discuss classic video games and trade classic video games. So
this is the first time I'm hearing about them.
Really? I feel like I've brought them up. Do you take a mind eraser at the end of each podcast?
Well, normally you do the Men in Black thing, but you're saying that they exist on the Facebook?
Yeah, they exist on the Mark Zuckerberg's Bookface.
No way.
Yeah. Probably the reason we have no viewers right now is because I don't like the Bookface, so I didn't advertise well enough on the Bookface.
Isn't that why we're part of an entertainment group now? Aren't they supposed to advertise for us?
Oh, they advertise for us, but also people might not have wanted to listen to us talk politics at all.
Okay.
So this might be the first live show with no viewers.
Perfect. That's great. I mean, that's our content. That's what we're known for. That's why you come to the tavern. You don't come to the tavern because you want to spend quality time with us. You come to the tavern when you want to drown your sorrows with other things that are going on. You want an escape from life.
I want to escape from remodeling my bathroom. So I am at a tavern drinking a very decent black lager right now, and probably going to have 2 of these during this discussion.
Well, because I am the libertarian, I had to make sure that my beer had a flak jacket to keep itself cold. So,
Well, let's start talking politics because that's what the listeners did not come for
yes,
today. So
this is fantastic.
it's kind of funny.
Usually I
actually.
joke that we don't have any listeners, but to actually have no listeners is mint.
Yeah, it's great. So you wanted to talk about UBI, Universal Basic Income, as our first topic from a socialist and libertarian point of view. So what are your thoughts on UBI?
What are my thoughts? You're throwing at me first?
Yeah.
I'm the one that does no research. You're the one that's supposed to come with facts and figures and understanding, and I'm just supposed to agree or disagree or come up with random things. Well, I guess for what my thought process on UBI is are we discussing adding it to our current system, or are we just discussing it in the context of, is it a good idea, under any circumstances?
Let's discuss it as in adding it to our current system.
Okay. Well, looking at it in terms of our current system, I would argue we already have UBI.
Really?
Yes. 100%. So people fall into a number of categories. I would throw out a number, but I can't do math that quickly. So you first have someone who is willing to work and able to work. That person is guaranteed a basic income through minimum wage. Next, you have the person who is willing to work but unable to work. That person falls under disability. So you are guaranteed an income through disability, or that person could also be retirement age. So then you're guaranteed an income through Social Security. Next, you have the person who is able to work but unwilling to work. I classify that as someone fired or quit. They are guaranteed a set income through unemployment. And then finally, you have unwilling to work and unable to work, and that falls under welfare and other social programs. If you need a form of income, you have to try not to get it. So that's where my argument is, we don't need UBI with our current system, because while it's a hodgepodge and it's a different income level for those four categories, there is something that's already in place that covers almost every single person in America.
I don't think that would be UBI as it's outlined. So my understanding of UBI is that it would be a certain dollar amount given to every citizen in the United States in a monthly paycheck. I've heard a couple open discussions of like something like $250 a month to every single person in the United States, or $1,000 a month to every person in the United States that makes less than $400,000 a year, things like that. When it comes down to it, I don't fully support UBI as a concept, but I think I understand where it comes from. And it's a twofold thing. First of all, as work gets roboticized, self-checkouts and stuff, you will have less jobs available for people. It may not be the numbers that some economists predict, that like it would be, upwards of 50% of people unemployed, but this would be a way to get wages into those people's hands. The other way is just to help raise people out of poverty, that, you're giving them $1,000 a month that they can pay for their housing or anything like that. With that, I think that UBI is a replacement for the fact our minimum wage has not kept up with the rate of inflation. If you look at the minimum wage, here's my facts and logic for you, Aaron.
Thank you. Finally.
Yeah, I got some facts and logic. In 1970, the minimum wage was $1.85. If you converted that into today's dollars, minimum wage would be at least $12.84 at a federal level. Now, that does not account for the fact that prices of things have increased, housing, college, things like that. So minimum wage should at least be above that as well. And a UBI of $1,000 a month, if you look at that at working hours of 40 hours a week, 4 weeks in a month is about $6.25 an hour extra in pay. So where I think the big push for UBI comes from is more towards, hey, we can't get our employers to pay us what we want, so we're going to, ask for the government to come in and supplement some wages that our employers won't pay. Now, with that said, I think there are advantages to UBIs in the terms you spoke of, such as Social Security and medical benefits, disability benefits, and things like that. Those could be seen as a form of UBI, but because it's not like a single level across all people, I don't think you can consider them a UBI.
Okay, I think that's fair. I mean, my big problem with UBI, well, one, I have a problem with the government just giving anybody money for literally just existing. Like, I think that's stupid. But from a practical standpoint, if UBI, what I see happening, if UBI was to be enacted tomorrow, I see wages dramatically drop throughout the country. Because from an employer standpoint, okay, let's say I'm paying you $14 an hour. If I find out, so first off, UBI is going to have to be funded somewhere. The government's going to fund it with taxes. If UBI is, let's say, $1 an hour, and that is the equivalent of $1 an hour for a 40-hour work week. Okay.
So we're talking about like 240 bucks a month or something.
Yeah. Let's just say it's that. For easy math, it's $1 an hour equivalency. I can see businesses paying people $1 less, because the argument's going to be, or wages are going to get stagnant for a period of time when they should be going up, but they're not because of inflation, because the argument's going to be, the government's giving you your first dollar and I'm going to pay you the other 14. And now you're at, and that's what's going to happen. Employers are going to argue you're making $15 an hour because your first dollar is being paid by the government and we're paying the other 14. So in reality, everybody's going to make less except for the people who aren't earning an hourly wage.
So what you're saying is we should increase the minimum wage over the UBI, because that would actually make sure the pay increases with inflation, which should be over $12 an hour at a federal level today.
And you'll put every single small mom and pop out of business.
But no, because people would have money to spend at those small mom and pops.
People don't have money to spend. That's the thing. As you raise minimum wage, the cost of everything goes up.
People don't have money to spend, even as it is, with minimum wage where it is. So this is the debate around UBI, is that there are people today, let's just take Walmart employees, for example, because they are on welfare way more than any other employed people should be, who don't make a living wage to be able to pay rent and things like that.
More than Amazon employees, because they hate their employees.
I think Walmart is still higher than Amazon on the number of employees on welfare.
That's shocking, because I saw a video where Amazon was docking people's pay because they went on break a minute
Yeah,
sooner.
I think Amazon actually pays really well. It just works you like you're not a human being.
Well, Bezos is an alien robot, so
he wants to fly to space, and we don't want him to return.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Totally fine.
So, with that point, though, one of the issues I see in this, and where I come from a socialist standpoint, is that wealth is hoarded at the top. Trickle-down economics does not work. An increase in minimum wage or even a UBI, in theory, we'd have to break some very ingrained thought processes in people's heads, should create, in GameStop terms, a circle of life. Because I've heard this argument before that you give a UBI and people are going to be wasting it on Escalades and the greatest smartphones. Great. So what? If you give someone a UBI and they get evicted from their house because instead of paying rent, they're spending it on smartphones, guess what? They had to buy that smartphone from somewhere. Let's say they bought it from a Best Buy. That means a Best Buy employee got paid. That money went back into the system and circled again through taxes, and you're creating a circle of life. They pay it on rent, their landlord gets paid. Their landlord now is buying stuff. If you had a UBI during the pandemic, there would have been no reason to suspend rent payments because you could say, hey, the government's giving you money, keep paying your landlords.
Well, we technically had UBI during the pandemic.
It was a kind of UBI.
It was only if you were unemployed.
It was only if you were unemployed.
So anybody that was a frontline worker or was in an essential business basically got fucked.
Yeah, or those one-time payments, the $2,000 that Joe Biden promised, but that actually meant $1,400 on top of the $600 that Trump gave us, which means Republicans actually gave us more total money from their payment.
Jake, how dare you do math?
Oh God! No! Sorry, Joe Biden.
I see the word socialist under your name is fading. It's fading, Jake. Clap so you believe.
Let's all be clear. Joe Biden is no socialist. That you libertarians make him to be this scary, scary monster. He is a right of center Democrat when it comes down to it. So,
I don't think he's a scary monster. I think he's a twice baked potato that got dropped under a washing machine for a little too long.
But well, yeah, he but yeah, back to UBI. He messed with Bernie too. No, but to that point, like, it would create a circle of life, trickle up economics. People would buy stuff with that money. There would be a certain percentage which are investing it in Doge, thinking it's going to make them millions, but that would be the small percentage.
You got to hold. You got to hold. You got to buy the dip, and you got to hold, Jake.
It's the rich man's game. By giving people money to afford their day-to-day, and I don't think it needs to be UBI. It should really be a minimum wage increase. Minimum wage should be $15, if not $17 an hour. And Aaron, to those small businesses, I also believe that there should be support structures in place to help those small businesses. They should be paying lower taxes into the system than the higher class businesses. I know we've talked about it before. I truly support a structure where the government comes and says, here is the benefits you have to give people. If you cannot achieve that, this is okay. But you won't get this tax break or this tax break or this tax break. You pay someone $17 an hour, you get the 5% corporate tax break. You're giving them this level of healthcare that gets you the 10% tax break. You need to incentivize these changes. Especially in our current capitalist structure, you have to put a dollar sign behind it to get businesses to buy into it. Especially those more wealthy businesses who find ways to cut corners.
It's true.
So,
well, to find common ground, I will say that one, as a libertarian, I hate taxes and I hate giving people money for nothing, but I would support a higher minimum wage before I'd ever support UBI. But to your point of basically reducing the burden for small businesses by basically saying, look, we're raising minimum wage to $15 an hour. We know that might be too much of a burden for you. So here's a tax incentive or a tax break for businesses over, or basically for businesses under a certain employee count. I'd be all for that. That would be a good middle ground.
Yeah. And I am currently of the stance in the work environment that, excuse me, a minimum wage increase is better than a UBI. I know I've read a lot of books about the future of humanity, and there's been a lot of debate whether or not in the next 50 years work will become so autonomized that we need a UBI because we will have an unemployed class that we literally cannot not get jobs. If anything, the environment I've seen post COVID has proved that's wrong, because there are companies out there everywhere need employees, $1,000 signing bonus, starting at $12 an hour, just trying to lure workers in. We've got the boomer generation that is on the verge of retiring or currently retiring. There are jobs out there for people.
It's true.
But you got to get the cause behind it to get people in, and maybe minimum wage is how it. No one should be working in their 40s 3 jobs to support their family because minimum wage is so low.
It's true. But I will say my biggest problem, or my biggest hang up with raising minimum wage to $15 an hour comes from the diversity aspect of America, and not diversity of, people or religion or races, anything, just that. But $7.25 as a minimum wage in New York is unlivable. All right. $7.25 in a state like Idaho or Nebraska or Mississippi is completely different. You compare, like, you're not comparing apples to apples. You could have a 3-bedroom house on half an acre in New York, and that house is going to be, $250,000, $300,000. The exact same house in a Midwestern state, could be 90 to 100,000. You don't need a super high minimum wage in places where cost of living is lower.
To that point, the minimum wage federally in 1970 was $1.85. If that kept up with inflation, the federal minimum wage would be $12.84 today. That is without accounting for college price increases, the fact that we have venture capitalist firms sniping homes out from us to prevent our generation from home ownership and owning wealth. So I don't think it matters. Yes, in certain states, maybe the minimum wage needs to be even higher than $15 to have a living wage.
Well, that's where the state comes in on top of the federal minimum wage.
And New York's a good place to look at, because $15 in Rochester goes a lot further than $15 in New York City.
Unshackle upstate.
So there's a difference there. I mean, you can't, any type place there's a big city, the minimum wage is going to be differently affected than out in a smaller city, the suburbs, or even suburban areas.
Right.
It's just how things are.
I'll give you the inflation. That minimum wage should at least keep up with inflation. And if inflation says that federal minimum wage should be 12, whatever you said, then I will concede and say that yes, it should keep up with inflation. To your point that minimum wage should have anything to do with the increased cost of college, I say nay, because first off, that the price of college has gone up has nothing to do with college actually being more expensive, and the fact that the federal government backs every single fucking student loan. So there's literally no reason any college should charge a reasonable rate, because if you default, they're going to still get the money. So why should I bother not charging you $500,000 for a bullshit piece of paper so you could get your bullshit liberal arts degree and end up not being able to get a job?
college is my go-to example, but there's been more that has had that same level of increase. Home ownership has
No,
increased.
just focus on college, because I can
No.
argue that one.
No, because that's what the talking heads do. Not going to do that. Well, on top of that, another statistic I looked at while looking at to this is CEO compensation has grown 940% since 1978 compared to the average worker. If you're looking at minimum wage, has only grown 36.6%. It's not balanced. Wealth is being accumulated at the top, and either a minimum wage increase or UBI could help a distribution of wealth and a circle of life of money where money is spent by people who need the money and then spread out.
So something just popped in my head with the statistics you just threw out.
What?
That I think you would like as a solution instead of UBI or dramatically increasing minimum wage. If the CEO's salary is a higher percentage than the lowest paid employee in the company, the CEO should be taxed at a very high bracket, and the corporation as a whole should be taxed should have an extra tax on it.
I love it.
Which as a libertarian, I'm supposed to hate taxes, but I'm as anybody who's listened to us knows, I'm more centrist than anything else. But for purposes of this live, where no one's listening to us,
no one's listening to us.
Is it still no one?
It's still no one.
Or people come and go, so people come in and they're like, "Oh fuck this, no."
Exactly.
These two assholes.
We're not screaming at each other enough. So people.
God damn it, Jake! They're turning the frogs gay.
They're turning the frogs gay.
Did that get anybody?
Nope. No.
I feel someone would have come in at that and then seen us both do that and gone, "Oh fuck no," and gotten out. Like
we're not controversial enough. Yeah.
Do I need to show like some more skin? Like, is that what's gonna do it? Ooh.
Completely down for what you proposed. With that fact, though, I would say, the one thing for that would scare me is, let's say the janitor's your lowest paid employee. Excuse me. At like $10 an hour or something. Well, your next lowest paid employee is making 17. Let's say you're a big sales organization. So, there's some huge disparity there that leaves the CEO at a better pay gap at 17. Well, now as a company, what I'm going to do is start outsourcing my janitor to a janitorial company. So the janitor isn't under my employee anymore, so that I can skate by that. But
yeah, but that happens now.
It does.
That literally happens right now with, having to offer benefits. And so the closest thing to what I propose that we have now are the restrictions with 401ks. So the reason why a lot of companies match your 401k contribution has nothing to do with the company wants your retirement to be successful. So with 401ks, you're classified either as an employee or a high earning employee, which is usually your executive suite. The executive suite or your high, and look, if there's a economist or someone listening to this and I'm fucking this all up.
No, there's no one listening to it.
I know there's no one listening, but
in and left again.
If someone's listening to this later and you're like, he's completely wrong. You know what? This is a podcast. I don't do any research. I'm shooting from the hip. Go fuck yourself. But for the way I understand it is for the basically the high income bracket of a company to contribute almost anything to the 401k, you need a certain percentage of the rest of the employees to contribute. So theoretically, if you have a company of 50 employees and only 2 people, regular people, are contributing, the CEO is not allowed to put anything in his 401k. He's fucked. So that's why companies will match or even just put money in. There's something called safe harbor, where if you fall under safe harbor guidelines, the CEO can put in as much money as he wants into his own personal 401k. So that's like, so there's a system like what we're talking about that already exists, which is why I think it could potentially be successful.
Oh, yes. Reagan's very horrible policies around 401k that led to the end of pensions and to the 401k program instead. Yeah. So my final points on UBI, I don't know if I stand for it. What I stand for is a minimum wage increase. I still to this day think that UBI is a group of people trying to say, well, if we're not going to get that minimum wage increase, we will get the minimum wage increase from the government by having a UBI that covers, I think it was like $6 an hour or something. So if you're making $14 an hour now with UBI, you're making $20 an hour instead of actually having a true minimum wage increase.
Yep, I'm still against UBI.
Yeah. I'm not saying that I'm for it. So let's talk healthcare, because I believe that's our second topic.
Oh, you're actually just going in. I randomly sent you the order, so
yeah, I'm just going in the order you sent.
All right,
me.
Fine. Healthcare.
I'm probably gonna have to look up what the third topic is. I forgot it already. So
well, there were technically 4 topics because
yes, there is a fourth one. I remember the fourth one because it was it
was interesting. One. Don't spoil it.
Yeah. So healthcare.
Healthcare.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, you start this time, seeing as you made me start.
All right. So I believe in government-run healthcare. And my stance in that is, first of all, it's not like universal healthcare. That means if you want LASIK surgery, not going to be covered by government healthcare. If you want a boob job, not going to be covered by government healthcare. But, if you get cancer, if you get hurt, your yearly checkup, you're covered under your government healthcare. What you can do is, if you want better healthcare than what the government provides, there's companies like Aflac or something that sell extended insurance that you can buy into and get even better insurance than what you're getting under your government healthcare. Your yearly dental exam, your yearly eye exam, your yearly checkup is what's covered under government healthcare. Certain glasses, if you want better glasses, more advanced glasses, you buy a power up to your system. You go like this and buy a power up and get the strobe lights on.
For those just listening to the podcast, because no one's watching this right now.
No,
Jake has colored strobe lights that he just turned on. I hope you enjoyed that visual. For those listening on Spotify and podcasts near you,
I might actually publish this on YouTube so people can watch it as well.
So no one can watch it there as well. Perfect.
Yes, no one can watch it there as well. With that said, when it comes to government healthcare, I think the other advantage of it now is employers have to provide a certain level of healthcare to lure employees in. If you were to take that away, first of all, you take away the employer's healthcare cost by now bringing it into a tax on the employee income tax, however you want to do that. And second of all, each company is starting at a fair range. They're all saying that we have government healthcare no matter where you go. Now, employers can come in and say, oh, well, we offer 50% off Aflac on top of that if you sign up for Aflac, to give them that incentive. But I don't think healthcare should be a employee incentive. I think the pandemic showed that.
So your thought is basically Medicare for all, and then you can supplement it.
Yes, Medicare for all with certain basic checkups covered and essential healthcare covered, and then you can supplement it for advanced healthcare. I think right now I get a dental cleaning every 6 months. Under government healthcare, it'd be once a year. You get your eye exam once a year, and under government healthcare, you get new glasses every 5 years. But if you want better than that, you get supplemental healthcare that now you can get glasses at a discount every year or whatever.
Okay.
That's where I stand.
So I got 2 points. So one, I'm going to not necessarily talk to your point of sort of Medicare for all and then a supplemental on top of it. I'm more going to sort of, well, I mean, part of it covers it. The thought of basically a government-run healthcare that takes the burden off of the company is, in my opinion, going to disproportionately affect employees and low-income employees than it's going to affect corporations. I mean, as a small business owner, I would love universal health care because it's a huge cost that we wouldn't have to incur and pass on to our employees. And it's going to totally fuck over all employees because they're going to get more taken out of their taxes. My example of this is New York State's brilliant idea to do paid family leave, which paid family leave sounds like a great program. It's presented as this great thing that an employer has to provide to you. Costs the employer nothing. Comes out of your paycheck. You are forced to pay for it. Majority of people will never, ever be able to use PFL because the criteria to use it is so narrow. But yet, they are doubling the rate almost every year that gets taken out of your paycheck. You are forced to buy this insurance taken out of your paycheck. And it's out of control and it's worthless for the majority of people who have to pay for it. And from that standpoint, I feel like any type of universal health care other than just, the providing the most basic necessities, as you said, to cover everybody for the most basic things is going to just completely screw over everybody. And then it's going to force wages to have to go up to compensate for it. And then it just becomes a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that because
this is what the people came here for, Jake, or didn't come here for, is for us not to agree.
Today, we incur the cost of healthcare when an uninsured person goes to the hospital because they don't pay that bill. They end up defaulting on it. It goes to some sort of bill collection agency that, buys the debt at a penny on the dollar and then collects it at 5 cents on the dollar. But then to account for it, the hospitals, which are for-profit organizations, are now charging you more for your health care that your insurance may only cover a certain amount. And, if everyone were paying into the system, there'd be a certain guarantee within healthcare of what is available and what hospitals can pay because you're saying the government's paying you. This is a checkup. You get, I don't know, $20 for that appointment. That's what you're going to get.
I don't think that would happen at all. The markup right now with healthcare is so ridiculously unreasonable. I mean, from a personal experience, went to the doctor, had a procedure done. The hospital was like, okay, this is how much this costs. Insurance went, no, we're only going to cover 2/3 of it. And the hospital was like, all right, I guess the new cost is 2/3 of it. Like, the prices are so overinflated. And I feel but I feel like once the government gets involved, it's not going to change because the government got involved with student loans and colleges still just increase the pricing.
I think there would be a certain point where the government would have to go, you're trying to charge me $5,000 for a yearly checkup. The money's not in the pot for that. It's a yearly checkup. We're giving it to every citizen in the United States. No, that we're not going to pay that.
That's not what the government does. The government's going to go, okay, and they're going to raise the taxes.
So maybe some of this has to be we are functioning under a functional government, which that's a
That's a lot. That's a stretch even for you.
that's a different story.
You- what pipe dream have you been? A functional government?
We're just watching, the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Well, so that was my first. So I have a different proposal for healthcare.
Okay.
So here's my libertarian ideals for healthcare. Uncouple it from work. Healthcare should not be determinant on working. I don't understand why there has to be this group rate policy. I think healthcare should be competitive. I think anybody should be able to buy it at any time. I mean, it's kind of what like the New York State Exchange does, but poorly. Because that's basically just creating like an artificial pool, saying that, everybody in it is getting a group rate. I think however you do it, I think it needs to be uncoupled from work, because it boggles my mind that you can be, paying $100 a week. Maybe that's too high, maybe that's too low. I don't know. $100 a week for a top tier healthcare policy, and lose your job, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you're not part of your corporation anymore, so instead of $100 a week, it's now $1,000 a week. Good luck. Like the whole COBRA program, which is you're supposed to be able to keep your healthcare after you lose your job, is a joke, because all it does mean that you lose your group rate and you have to pay full price. I think if healthcare wasn't tied to having a job, there's got to be a way to bring the rates down. I mean, there are other countries like, Netherlands and stuff that don't have healthcare tied to work, and rates are dramatically lower because there's not that barrier to entry to get healthcare. And the other thing I see is if for whatever reason, I don't know why this would have to be a thing, but if it has to be done on group pricing, why does the group have to be the company you work for? If you're part of a federal credit union, why can't the credit union offer healthcare? I mean, there are certain, organizations, whether you're part of a club or a fraternity, that offer, group life insurance. Why can't they also offer healthcare? Why can't, the bank that you go to, why can't your group be part of that instead of, where you work? And then if you lost your job, you still have your bank, so your healthcare rate doesn't change.
100% agree with you. I think it's the silliest thing that healthcare is bundled to work. I should be able to go to Liberty, Geico. I should be able to bundle my home, auto, and health. Any of those. Even in my example, when I mentioned, you'll get your universal healthcare, and then you can get your additional healthcare on top of it. And I said Aflac, and then, employers can say, hey, we pay 50% of Aflac healthcare or whatever. My whole thought around that was, yeah, but then anyone can go out and buy Aflac. Employers might offer,
Right.
we pay 50% of your Aflac to get you to join, but it's not coupled to work. Right. It is a free market. And, you might go, well, you pay 50% for Aflac, but Aflac only offers me new glasses every 2 years. Liberty Mutual is only $2 more a month than Aflac's insurance, and I get new glasses every year. I'm not going to take your 50% bundle. I'm going to go buy it from Liberty outside of the company.
Right.
Back in the day when you would be at a company and be like, oh yeah, if you get a phone from Verizon with us, we offer a 16% discount with Verizon. It's the same thing. Anyone could go to Verizon and buy a phone, but your company might offer a discount. Anyone can go to Aflac and buy add-on insurance, but your company might offer an incentive if you do it through the company plan. That means if you become unemployed, you don't lose your Aflac, but you might lose your discount that you're getting with the company.
Right.
And you'll still have your base level healthcare.
Yeah.
So,
all right, we found common ground.
Yeah.
Do we have any listeners?
0 listeners still. No one wants to
Perfect.
talk to us or listen to a socialist and a libertarian agreeing on things.
Well,
You know,
I could also probably say, I mean, look, we have to be honest with the current political landscape in the world, or at least in America, because most of the other world isn't as obsessed with politics as, America is, because they have real problems. But I feel like most people nowadays aren't centrists anymore. So just seeing a socialist and a libertarian, anybody who's a right winger is going to be like, oh, fuck, I don't want to listen to this goddamn socialist spout on about his communist bullshit. I ain't watching this. And I'm sure everybody, all the left wingers are like, a fucking libertarian. Oh, I don't want that racist piece of shit that's going to be thumping the Bible the entire time, telling me what to do. So I feel like we've alienated both sides, which is what our podcast is meant for.
Yes,
if you're a winger, you go back to some of our early podcasts where we used to make fun of people like you, and we would tell you to get fucked. This is for, reasonable people who have discussions about reasonable things.
I mean, I want to see the end of capitalism as a system, but that doesn't mean I want to see the end of democracy, which is why I'm not a communist. I believe that socialist is the economic program that we should follow, and I believe that democracy is the political system we should follow. I want to see the uncoupling of your political system, meaning your economic system, because China is capitalist and a communist government.
They are capitalist, like Miller Lite is beer.
Well, I mean, there were capitalist and we had bread lines during the pandemic, like a communist country that you would imagine. So uncouple your political system from your economic system.
I agree. Uncouple your political system from your economic system. I am going to divert from the topics we're saying real quick and say that bread lines are not an indication of a failure of the free market and capitalism. And I'm going to point out something real quick. So first up, I think the biggest problem and the reason why there is such a coupling with an economic and a political system is because people don't actually understand what the political spectrum is. And it's not right and left. It's a 4-quadrant thing. And the left and the right is your economic system, and north and south is the political affiliation. So the far left is communism. The far right is libertarianism or free market. The far north is completely authoritarian, and the far south is anarchy, even though whatever that political compass is changed the south to libertarian, which that's just like limited government. The antithesis of full control is not some control. The antithesis is no control. So I don't know what the hell they were thinking there. But personally, I feel, regardless of what my views are, the only political economic system that is truly viable for how human beings are is a centrist model, which takes a little bit from all of them and finds the happy medium. Like, if you only eat steak, you're going to die. But if you have a balanced diet of steak and some carbs and some vegetables, you're going to be healthier.
Jordan Peterson, if you only eat red meat, you will die. And your daughter will have to fly you to Russia to try to save your life.
What is Russia going to do?
I don't know. He somehow survived, though.
Okay.
They probably fed him like Brussels sprouts or something. And we're like, no, you can't eat only red meat. Here are Brussels sprouts and vodka.
Oh, that would work. That would work. But so with that, communism is not a viable system because communism and Marxism ignores the basic psychological components of what it is to be a human being.
Communism's great on paper.
Right, because it ignores human nature.
Yeah, 100%. It's great on paper.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
because it
practice,
ignores what a human is.
absolutely horrible.
Because people are people. But here's the other reason why a 100% libertarian free market economic system fails in the same way that communism does.
Because people are people.
Because people are people, and the problem with the classic argument for why capitalism is bad and why a free market never works is because you get monopolies, and monopolies hurt people and all of that, which is true. But a monopoly cannot stand over time, because if a monopoly was infinite, you wouldn't have phrases like too big to fail. And the reason why a free market fails is because most people aren't willing to accept the fall. Like, people are going to hurt under a free market system. But if you just let the free market run its course, less people will be hurt over, a shorter amount of time than if you artificially pump things up and then, kind of like, making sure interest rates don't go up and, helping a mega investment firm buy up houses at a high rate, so that you're just sort of kicking, that can of an economic crash down the road, so inflation keeps going up. Because there's only one way to fix inflation. There's only one way, and that is a complete and total collapse of the economic system, which the higher it gets, the greater the crash. If you just let it fucking crash, it's going to suck. It's going to hurt. People are going to lose their jobs. Things are going to get expensive. But if you crash it at a lower point, which is more natural, it fixes itself. Whereas if you just fucking keep pumping it up, like the phrase that pissed me off more than anything in my entire life was too big to fail. No, too big should have failed.
Bailing out the auto industry, bailing out the big banks, not holding bankers accountable for
let
the
them go to jail.
Loans that they processed. Like, I will be clear, this happened under a Democrat.
Why did nobody learn? Well, okay, Jake, let's clear the air and let's, reveal our true nature. Democrats and Republicans are all pretty much the same. And all politicians are really just corporate-crats who don't care about the people, and they just care about corporations and making money.
Yeah, those bailouts should have never happened. 2008 should have probably gotten worse. And we probably wouldn't be in a lot of the situations we are now.
Literally no one learned anything. And we're heading for another housing crash.
We're heading for another housing crash in which I think a quarter of buyers in the market now are venture capitalist firms.
Yeah, so
either from the US or China.
Yeah. And it's one of those where the thing that I don't understand and why no one's talking about it, and why no one's talking about it. Every single marker that led, every single canary in the coal mine that led to the 2008 crash, we are hitting, literally in the same domino effect. And everybody's like, no, it's fine. It's totally fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine, right? It's not like we saw this happen before 10 years ago.
Just don't understand why you don't own a home and have a college degree. Well, Papa, when you went to college, it was $300 total for your college education. You were able to buy a home for $100,000. Well, that's actually way too much. For $40,000, working one job with your wife, staying at home with the kids. All this stuff doesn't exist anymore. You just gotta work hard.
When I went to college,
I fucking work hard to get this shit.
I worked at a laundromat and I picked up. I don't know why my grandfather's Southern. He grew up in New York City and lived here his entire life. But when I went to college, I was folding laundry. I picked up the laundry from everybody else in my dorm, and that's how I paid my way through. I don't know why you can't just work a little. How your generation doesn't know work ethic. Well, that's our parents' fault because, they told us that we deserved, participation trophies and just to shit on our generation of millennials a little bit. I heard a really fucked up thing that apparently millennials, more than anything else in the workplace, want to be validated for existing, not for actually doing work. most millennials would rather you say like, thank you so much for being here today. I really value that, you're a part of this team. And I'm like, I would rather be told that I kicked ass on this and, was actually valuable. I don't really give a my existence. Me being alive is enough validation that I exist.
Let's be completely honest here. Our parents' generation bitches about participation trophies because we're now in our 30s and 40s after they were the ones that were like, well, my kid showed up. You have to give them a trophy. And it's like, I didn't place in first, second, or third. I don't want this piece of paper that says fourth, great job. No, you were the one who pushed that and now are bitching about our generation expecting it.
Yeah, really, it's baby boomers that are the problem. They've always been the problem. The baby boomers' parents' generation hated you. As millennials, we hate you too. I'm in the weird boat because my dad's not a boomer. So I was raised by so he's the generation that raised the Xers. So I got that weird. And then, not to out my mom, but she's an older boomer. So I'm just like, I'm this weird mix of like, I kind of am a millennial, but at the same time, I really not. So I reject everything.
Yeah,
Do I go by millennial or Gen Y? I go by Aaron. That's who I am. You call me that. Generation Me.
Yeah.
Oh wait, that's also a name for millennials.
My other point before we move on to our next topic, after bitching about the fact that like we were horribly set up to fail because like we can't own shit, everything's rented out for us. We live in a pay per month economy now. There's no such thing as a lawnmower that lasts you 20 years that you could afford right off the bat.
That you could fix yourself.
I mean, I'm doing my bathroom myself. Our
generation
doesn't know how to do that stuff anymore.
Just to go to like the pay per month, economy that like you talked about. Like I remember when Netflix first came out and it was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. We're cutting the cord. I'm going to get rid of cable. I'm going to save so much money. No, but between all the fucking subscription services, like I'm almost at the point where, give me the cable package back. But not really because I hate Spectrum. And they can just suck a big dick.
It's all pay per month. It's not going to be long before you don't buy your fridge. You rent your fridge, and after 2 years you can get a fridge upgrade, but there's an upgrade fee for upgrading your fridge and things like that. The cell phone model on fridges, and I've heard the cell phone model hitting video game consoles, and we are moving to a generation of not ownership, but renting, I guess is the best term. But my final point before we move on to the next topic, which you're going to have to remind me on, is I heard from a friend of mine, a new political group is the Socialist Libertarians. Have you heard of this political group?
What Frankenstein group is this?
So apparently it's pretty much anarchy. They believe in no government control over their lives, but they want the government to pay for everything in their day-to-day aspect. So the government can't tell you what to do, but pays for your health care. You don't have to have a job, but the government pays you to exist. It's like this Frankenstein of like, how do these...
That's called being a spoiled, entitled brat.
Yeah. Apparently it's a thing, though.
That's the brat party.
Yeah. Don't tell me what to do. I don't want the government controlling me.
But give me everything, because I don't want to actually do it.
But give it to me.
Give it to me. I want it.
Give it to me. All right. What was our third topic?
Our third topic was education.
Education. All right. I'll take this. I'm on beer number 2. This is a very good beer, by the way.
I was just about to start on number. I was debating.
I'm
number 2.
At the end of number 2.
Oh my gosh, I need to catch up.
Yeah. So education, I believe, to a certain level, there should be government standards to education, and I say that knowing that education from a government level has been done poorly. The No
What
Child
you
Left
mean? You
Behind
mean
Act.
since the Department of Education was founded, that we've slipped in global rankings every single year?
I think more that the government's level of education should be outlining certain topics that everyone needs to learn about, and partial textbook control, in that certain states can't buy textbooks that spin that level of education to the way they want it to. And as much as I don't want college to become grade 13 through 16, I think there should be certain government incentives to college, but trade schools should be included in that. It should not just be colleges. And if you need to say that, hey, only your 2-year organizations, your community colleges, or your first 2 years of college are included, or you can go to a trade school, I think it is completely unfair to exclude trade schools. If someone wants to become an electrician or a plumber, good on them. Don't exclude their education just because they're not going and getting a English major from being paid for.
Agreed.
So
I will say, from the college standpoint, I'll start there. I think the worst thing that happened to our generation was this notion that everybody needs to get a college education.
yes,
I think
and that's why I said trade schools should be included.
Like, it's a completely false ideal, and everyone should have access and the ability to go to college, but not everybody should go to college. There is a large percentage of the population that goes and gets a college degree that never should have gotten a college degree. I mean, one of the best arguments I ever heard was someone was asking, should I go to college? And the person's response was, well, are you going to pay for it, or are your parents going to pay for it? And, the response was, well, my parents said that, they would cover my college education. And the response was, great, go take your 4-year vacation.
I mean, I do so much with my political science degree that I spent 4 years at college for. It was totally worth it.
That's why we have this podcast, Jake. We
Oh,
wouldn't
yes.
have this if you didn't
Yes.
have. I mean, this podcast is netting us 0 listeners. I mean, it's the top of the line in terms.
I mean,
of
it's as useful as my political science degree.
So from a standpoint of lower education, or basically, first through 12, I 100% believe that we need some form of school choice. And the argument for school choice or against school choice has always been, if you allow people in a shitty school district to take their tax dollars and go somewhere else, it's just going to make that district smaller or make that district worse. And I would argue that's not true. Because first of all, school choice shouldn't be, I can take my tax dollars and enroll my kid in another public school. It should be, I can take my school tax dollars, and if I choose to send them to a private school, a religious school, or homeschool, like if you're in a shitty school district, or it doesn't matter if it's a shitty school district, if you decide that you want to send your kids to a private school, you should be able to take the tax dollars, or at least the majority percentage, 80%. The district gets to keep 20%. 80% you get to take with you, and you can put that towards your private school tuition or a charter school. Or if you're homeschooling, you get that back in a refund so that it covers school supplies, teaching aids. You could do a co-op. It would go towards that. So now the argument is, well, that school district has less money, but that school district has less kids. And in the most extreme, it would benefit the school district, because let's say you take a bad school district and you have 1,000 kids in a grade, okay? And now you offer school choice, and people have a way out because they're paying. Because here's the thing: the worst school districts have some of the highest taxes on them because they're trying to fix a broken system, and they just keep throwing money at it. So you take those kids out and all that money. All of a sudden, instead of one teacher to 100 kids, you're now getting one teacher to 50 kids. So while there's less money in, the quality of teaching goes up because the more kids you have, the lower quality it is. I mean, that's a proven fact that just happens. If you take the majority number of kids out of a broken system, and the people in that system are still working there, are able to give more attention, the quality of the teaching is going to go up, which means over time, the school system is going to get better, which means more people are going to not take their kids out and put them in a different system. And they're going to send you like, oh, the public school's getting better. So they're going to put them into the system, which means the system's going to get more money and it's going to be rewarded for fixing it when they had less people. And over time, that school system should get better. Also, most people, especially in low income areas, don't have the means to move to a different area to get a better school system. So without a system like school choice, you're basically saying, I want people who live in a bad area to have bad education and have no means of getting out. Because people with high income, if they live in a bad neighborhood or a bad school district, they send their kids to private school. So without allowing school choice, you're basically saying rich people should be able to send their kid wherever they want, but poor people should be stuck in a broken system.
I semi-agree. First of all, when it comes to school taxes, so I have a daughter going into kindergarten, so I've attended some of these meetings lately about why Brighton didn't have full day kindergarten and things like this. And it comes down to this broken system from New York State on how to determine how much funding goes to each school from a state level. I think from a tax dollar standpoint, there should be a head count pay. Each student in a seat nets the school $50 a month. I don't just throw that out there.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. And it does not matter how bad the school district is or whatever, each student in a seat, you get this much in school funding from the Department of Education. So, you have a class of 300. If it's $10 a seat, you're looking at $3,000 a month in education. What I think the Department of Education should more be outlining in the K through 12 range is minimum education needed to succeed in the world. And that means no child left behind. I don't know if it's even still a thing, but needs to go away because you have to realize that people learn differently and no child left behind disadvantaged people who learn differently.
Yep.
And then second of all, you need to determine the skills that everyone needs to succeed. And there are certain human what's it called? Humanity classes that are missing today in education. Critical thinking should be taught in the 8 through 12 range.
You mean they should actually teach critical thinking instead of just destroying it?
Yeah, teach critical thinking.
How bold of you, Jake.
Teach how to do your taxes. Teach some of those basic life skills along with your math skills, your English skills, and then you also realize that certain levels of that K through 12 education is indoctrinated education and probably could go away.
Probably.
And I think that's more where things come from. I kind of don't hate to bring it up because I think it's crazy. All this stuff about critical race theory that's going on right now with parents flipping out. I don't think a single parent that's flipping out about critical race theory understands what it is and that most students aren't actually learning this. I think one of the school districts that had a like huge meeting was like, there's one class that's an elective class that you learn critical race theory in. And parents were flipping a shit about it.
I will say I think the biggest problem with everything that's going on with critical race theory is there is no real education on what it is. And to be completely honest, there is no real standard for what it is. Depending on who you talk to, you can get a completely different definition of what it is. And it's such a, I don't want to say new concept because it's something that's been around for a while, but it's something that's being pushed so quickly, so heavily that I think in some areas you're having, and but this happens every time the government or politicians pick something and then decide to just like, oh, this is what we need to do to fix why people are upset. And they just cram it. And half the people don't know what's going on. The other half think they know what's going on when in reality they don't. And then you just have craziness. I go back to the belief that, you put two different types of ants in a jar and they're going to live in perfect harmony until you shake the jar, and then they're going to kill each other because they think the other ants are the ones that upset the ecosystem. And in reality, we're just here trying to live, and there's these government forces that just keep shaking the jar on us.
And I guess that's where I would say the Department of Education should come in and define what critical race theory is. The base level definition of what I've heard, and it can get pretty crazy depending on which media lanes you follow and how scary they're trying to make it, is that it teaches you that laws were applied differently or even set up based on race. And even though those laws may have changed, that still exist. And that is not a wrong belief at any sense. And it is something that people should learn, that laws apply differently to different groups of people. But because no one knows what it is, because we weren't taught critical race theory, because our parents' generation weren't taught it, parents are now flipping out. And I saw pictures comparing one PTSA meeting to the first time that Black students were allowed into schools, and it was eerily similar. The screaming white people that were flipping out about something they definitely didn't understand, but Tucker Carlson told them they need to be scared of.
Well, let's be fair. Every single media outlet is telling their sides that they need to be scared of the other side, and it's all bullshit. And let's be fair. You got people that are manipulating critical race theory on both sides. You got the people on the right that are saying that this is the worst thing to happen and it's going to destroy everything, and then you got people on the other side who are bastardizing critical race theory to turn it into a supremacist movement to pit one race against the other. So,
yes. And I guess that's where I'm saying is the Department of Education comes in to define what a basic K through 12 education should consist of, and national textbooks, which I know still don't exist today, that certain states can get their own textbooks with history rewritten to the way they prefer. There was a meme going around.
You mean the War of Northern Aggression?
The War of Northern Aggression.
The South will rise again, Jake.
There was a meme going around right about the time I was in Virginia, and I was joking with the friend in Virginia about it. About someone found at a thrift shop a textbook from Virginia in the 1950s explaining the Civil War. And it was like, Virginia was a America-loving state. And we just knew when President Abraham Lincoln attacked South Carolina that we could not stand for this aggression. So General Robert E. Lee returned to his home, and we became the capital of the Confederacy to protect states' rights, which President Lincoln was trying to attack.
Well, as someone who lived in Virginia for a number of years and learned their ways. It was absolutely true, and it was definitely the War of Northern Aggression. And those northern states wished to take away our rights, and we just wanted to be free, and the corrupt federal government wished to destroy our freedoms. And it 100%. I will say the funniest thing that ever happened to me in Virginia, and this is the difference between a northern education and a southern education, is the naming of Civil War battles. So the North, and when you have an education in the North with a northern textbook, every single battle is named after the closest landmark. So one of the biggest battles in the Civil War was the Battle of Bull Run, which in Virginia, living literally behind where the battle took place in Bull Run National Park, I was very quickly corrected that it was the Battle of Manassas, because the South named every battle after the closest town or city, because the North named every battle in the South after the closest landmark, because the theory is that they didn't want anybody in the North to believe that there could be human casualties associated with it. So it's just, oh no, it's taking place at in Bull Run, which is just a national park, has nothing to do with the town nearby.
It's funny. In my travels to Virginia, I heard about how they have been trying to move the Confederate capital out of Richmond because a school is being built around it and doesn't want it there anymore. And nobody wants this building. I'm sure there's some of the non-listeners in Alabama that would love to have the Confederate capital re-established there. But the other surprising thing is, driving through upstate New York, I tend to see Confederate flags and MAGA flags, and I saw none of those in Virginia at all. But the moment I got into Pennsylvania, there was a Pennsylvania car with a Pennsylvania license plate right with the Confederate flag on it. That Confederate state of Pennsylvania.
Is surprising how much Southern sympathizers there are in Pennsylvania.
And in parts of New York.
Well, yeah, I got no explanation for New York.
Pennsylvania, I guess, was at least close enough to the borders.
I guess Battle of Gettysburg, you had clashes, and I guess a lot of Southerners. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a problem with what most people consider the Confederate flag, as a lot of people on the left do. But
because it isn't. I don't like it, but it's also not the Confederate flag. It is something that has since been adopted by certain people. Just like those Confederate statues that got taken out of DC that the Democrats, the Republicans voted to keep at the Capitol, even though the Democrats were the Southerners during that time. Different podcast about the political alignment switch between the two parties,
which never actually happened.
Shouldn't exist, which totally happened, but
it didn't happen.
Different point.
No, you don't get to throw the party switch in there and just, I'm on, now that I'm into two beers, you don't get to throw the party switch in there and move on.
It's funny. I was re-listening to
we talked about this already.
JFK's speech, because we have it in our podcast intro, and there are some definite Republican views in that Democratic speech as of today. But yes, the Department of Education, in my opinion, in the K through 12 range, should be providing what education should entail. And I completely believe it needs a critical thinking philosophy standard in that education. I also believe in the college range, there should be some sort of funding, because it has become partially necessary to have that extra degree. Now, whether I'm on the fence of whether or not that should be your full 4 years or just your associates, I lean towards just your associates, and that it should also include trade schools at that point.
I think associates 2 years and trade schools should be covered. I think there is no need for a college degree in the practical world. I think there is a need for
Tell companies that.
Well, okay, from the standpoint of being a small business owner, I don't understand a lot of the bullshit that exists within corporate America. The biggest thing being, I have never cared less about where your degree comes from than actually becoming a business owner. Like, now, I don't understand why anyone would brag that they went to Harvard. That's not an accomplishment to me. Like, whether you went to the University of Phoenix or Harvard, I see them as the same. Because the big secret that no one ever seems to talk about is you can get into any college you want if you just make it through the first year of whatever college you got into and then transfer. Because especially places like Harvard and Yale and all the Ivy Leagues that are so good, their dropout rate after year one is so high that if you make it through the first year of whatever shit university you went through and get like a 3.8, 3.9, 4.0, you can get into almost any college you want. And the same thing goes for like secondary education, like law school and, business school. You make it through the first year of law school. And I had a friend who did this, went to a 3rd-tier law school, got through the first year, transferred into one of the top 5 law schools in the country. Easy. And had a scholarship. All because they made it through the first year at their, low-tier law school with flying colors. Because the dropout rate at this top-tier university was so high.
So I had a point, I forgot it, and it made me think of something else when you said that 4.0. I had a teacher in college that was like, look, if you get a B in this class, you're doing great. I've been teaching here since 1960. A's aren't a thing except for those people who exceed. You want to talk about participation trophies, though? The fact that, like, everyone has to have the best grade is a participation trophy nowadays. That the fact that, like, a C student is average, a B student is great or good, and an A student is great does not exist anymore.
No, everyone's got to be getting an A and a 4.0, which makes it a completely meaningless.
Yes, it does.
And also, I was told throughout my entire 4 years of college, your GPA and your transcript mean everything for your first job, and it was completely meaningless. Every internship I ever had, every job interview I went through for my first job, no one ever asked for my transcript or what my GPA was. Just, oh, you went there to university? That's great. That's a good university.
College is a great marketing scheme.
Oh, it's a huge scam.
Huge.
Almost as good as the ShamWow.
All right.
Our last topic?
Let's cover taxes. So we're going to talk about income tax versus universal sales tax. Was that your concept?
Yes.
All right.
Well, you want me to take this off because you started the other two?
Yeah, why don't you take this one?
Okay, so here's the concept. If you actually want to help create generational wealth and get rich people to fucking pay their taxes, completely eliminate federal income tax. 100%. It needs to go away. It was never supposed to be permanent anyway. But people are, greedy and lazy. So here it is. Get rid of federal income tax, but instead instate a universal federal sales tax. That way, the federal government will make more money. People will keep more money and will buy more stuff, which means the federal government gets more money. Win-win.
Here's my counter argument for that. And I'm
Yep.
going to provide a solution to it.
Okay.
I could see the ultra wealthy trying to skirt the tax by buying their products outside of America. With that said, add a tariff to purchases made outside of America from within the states when you do your taxes. So just like corporations get charged, this would also, in a sense, get people to buy American. Now you're buying from Best Buy, who's buying that phone from Samsung, who makes it in Korea, but whatever. I just think we should have a flat income tax. And, we determine whatever, 15%, let's say. If you make $1,000 a year, you pay $150 in taxes for the year. If you make $1 million a year, you pay, what is that? 1,500. I don't know. I'm blinking at this point. 15,000 or whatever. You pay your 15% tax. No tax breaks, whatever. Just here's your flat tax rate that you pay on your income for the year.
So here's why I disagree with the flat income tax working. The wealthiest people in the country don't pay income tax and never will pay income tax.
I know. I saw Jeff Bezos technically only made $800,000 last year.
Because
one of the wealthiest persons in the world, he only made $800,000 because that's what he got paid for.
And here's the biggest problem with income tax, and here's the biggest scam on the American people, is the income tax. Everybody argues that we need to have a progressive income tax because we need to raise income tax, blah, blah, blah. No matter what you do with income tax, you are never going to get that money out of the top 1%. You're never going to get it out of the top 20% because let's just go with the top 20% of wealth in America. Almost all of them are either own their own business or high up positions, C-suite level of that business. When you own your own business or work in the top of your business, the thing that is never taught in school and was never taught to me until I actually, had my own business, is that the profit and loss of the business, if set up properly, flows through you. So even if, and the way that a business can manipulate its profit and loss is astronomical. You could have let's be honest, Amazon
has never made a profit,
which is bullshit. But that's how the tax and the company works. If I make $100 million in revenue, but I invest, $80 million back into the company, and then I incur $30 million in expenses, my company had a loss of $10 million, even though it's sitting on $1 billion in the bank. Because that's the thing with corporate, finances. It's doesn't matter how much money you have or the flow of the cash. It matters how it falls on a balance sheet. And as long as you do things right, you can always flow through. So the other thing is, to go with that, Jeff Bezos could technically take $1 million paycheck, but if the company lost, $990,000 that year, his net income would only be $10,000. And guess what? He's getting a refund at that point. Like, the problem with any type of income tax is you are never, ever going to get the top 20% to pay into the system, which I don't know why my light was freaking out.
It's freaking out every time you move.
I'm going to try. Maybe I got to stand too far back. No. For those listening, this is great. And it's actually, the light's not actually doing anything. It's just how the fucking camera is reacting to the light. Almost lost my train of thought, but it doesn't matter what you do with income tax. You're never going to get the top 20%. So what's going to happen is the government is always chasing getting that money from the top 20%, which means it is always going to be raising the income tax level for the poorest people, which prevents them from getting generational wealth. To your point of, well, rich people will just buy things overseas, I think a tariff works, or the other way is you have to pay a use tax. Technically, so we're in Rochester. You have Monroe County, which has sales tax at 8%. Ontario County has a sales tax of 7.5%. So it's cheaper to buy things at Eastview Mall. So someone who lives in Brighton goes to Eastview Mall. That same thing from Pittsford Plaza is going to be cheaper at Eastview Mall because the sales tax rate is less. Did you know at the end of the year on your taxes, you're supposed to list that difference and you're technically supposed to be paying that 0.5%?
Yes, I did know that.
So, but no one does. No one ever does. And that was the thing with, buying shit online before they came out with universal tax codes for online sales, is you were supposed to be reporting everything you bought on Amazon back in the day and paying taxes on it. So theoretically, a rich person buying their $8 million, Gulfstream from France instead of from Tennessee, they would still have to pay tax on that to the government. And the thing
pre-tax internet was amazing.
I know it was so good. But that's
so good.
That's why I argue that a universal federal sales tax is better than a federal income tax, because the uber wealthy, there's no loophole to get around paying sales tax. And the counter argument to a universal sales tax is you're still disproportionately hurting the lowest income, because they're paying everything they buy is taxed. But my argument is you already have sales tax, so it's already disproportionately hitting people, but you can mitigate that by not allowing a federal sales tax on things that aren't allowed a sales tax now. So food, unprepared goods, and then I'd throw in there, baby formula and diapers. Basically essentials shouldn't be taxed. Everything else, put a flat, 2 or 3% federal tax, and then if a state wants to put a little bit more on it, they can put a little bit more on it.
A luxury tax almost.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask you this, because I'm kind of sold on it, but there's a missing piece to it.
Okay.
And that's that there should be a sales tax on stonks, aka stocks. With that said, I've heard this idea thrown around that there should be a sales tax on stocks, and it shouldn't be where your standard sales tax is when you purchase the item, you pay your sales tax. But the sales tax on stock should actually be when you sell it. So if you want to buy 100 shares of a penny stock, you're going to pay nothing when you buy that stock. But if you go to sell that penny stock, and let's say it's hit $1, you got a lucky penny stock, you're now going to be paying the sales tax on your sale of that stock. With that said, I heard, the idea I heard pitched was like it's a 1% tax. It's not very high, but it would apply to all sales of stocks. So also these hedge funds that try to short sale stocks would be paying that 1% on their sale, their transaction. I know, to bring up Bezos again, the man only made $800,000 last year, but he's so wealthy because so much of that exists in stocks, which he probably trades on the daily.
Right.
Would you agree to I would say it would be a significantly lower tax on a stock sale, but on something like that?
I'm going to burst your bubble that already exists. It's called a capital gains tax.
But it's not really.
Yes. It's exactly what you're describing. If I buy a stock at a penny and I sell it for $1, I have to pay a percentage of basically the earnings, which is essentially what you're describing. What I liked where you were starting. I got really excited. I would rather pay a sales tax on the front end.
Really?
I would rather pay a sales tax on the front end of buying a stock and eliminate capital gains. If I buy a penny stock and I end up selling it at $2, good on me. Because what's going to happen is you're going to allow people to make... So let's be honest, this past year has been crazy for stocks. We had the GameStop, you have AMC, right? You have Dogecoin, and then you had all the bullshit that happened around it. Robinhood screwing over all of their people, all the platforms cramping down. Because what you really had was you had people who don't have a lot of wealth getting wealthy really quickly because they figured out the game and they beat the big guys at their own game. By taxing people on the back end, you're preventing them from being able to roll everything forward and basically take their winnings out of it. It's basically like saying you can go to the casino and you can gamble all you want, but we're going to take a huge percentage of your winnings, which I know they do, but there's a reason why most people don't gamble because, what's the point of winning if you're going to take it away? Now, if you tax on the front end of buying a stock, you're still like, yes, you're not going to get a lot of money from the person who buys a penny stock and then cashes out big, but you're going to get a lot of money from the uber wealthy because when you're over a certain amount of wealth, you don't buy one stock. You buy 1,000 shares of a stock.
You're buying Tesla at $400 whatever dollars a share it's at or something.
Right. And you're buying 1,000 of them. Because the thought process is, if the stock goes up $1, I just made $1,000. I mean, there are services out there like Motley Fool and these investment websites. This is they're not a sponsor, but there are investment websites that say don't sign up with us unless you're willing to buy 10 shares minimum of any stock we recommend, because you're not gonna have the movement in the stock. You're not going to make the profit out of it. So I would rather pay sales tax on the front end of buying a stock rather than the back end, because I think you're going to allow people to keep more wealth. And I think it shouldn't be restricted in any way. So it shouldn't be, if I trade one stock for another, I should have to pay sales tax. Because right now that's a big way that people skirt around capital gains, is instead of cashing out the stock, they'll just transfer the stock into something else. And there are literally services out there that do something called tax harvesting, which is, these big investment firms, they'll buy 10,000 shares of a company that is on the rise. They'll then buy 10,000 shares of a stock that they know is dying. And what they'll do is, they'll make $100,000 on stock A that went up, and then they'll sell it and they'll take their profit. But in stock B that went down, let's say they lost 20,000 or 30,000, and they use that loss to offset the gain. And technically a smart investor can constantly buy shitty stocks that are failing and just keep recording the losses and use the same money to just keep trickling and basically offset their gains, which you have to have a lot of money. You have to really understand what you're doing. Whereas if you have to pay a sales tax on the front end, you would never be able to skirt that. You'd never be able to play the game. You're always going to be paying into the system. And if you transferred one stock to another, I think you should have to pay sales tax.
So I guess that's where I'm coming from is, I'm talking more of the people that transfer stocks, that there should be a tax even on that transfer when you're selling one stock and buying another. So it's similar to your system that every single purchase of a stock should have a sales tax.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah,
a different sales tax than, your standard product sales tax, but
right. Yeah, I say don't couple it to the sale, couple it to the purchase.
Okay. I could go for that.
A libertarian and a socialist agreed. What is
Yes.
going on in the world? Oh,
Well-
God, this is why no one's watching us.
Yeah, Aaron, for our 0 viewers, this has been fun.
This has
I
been
need to get
great.
some sleep at this point because I got an all-day bathroom remodel to work on tomorrow. So with that, I will party on for all the people that aren't watching with my strobe lights here.
Yeah, and you want me to play us out with our usual outro,
Yeah.
saying goodbye. Well, for all of our listeners that didn't tune into our live, and thanks for that. We love you too. You know what? In spite of you not supporting us, we want you to stay safe, drink responsibly, and we'll see you next time at the tavern.
Fuck it, we're doing it live.